Welcome to the rice fields, motherfucker!
Game over, yeah!
Finally, after 6 years, Edelweiss returns to us with a spiritual successor to their fantastic shoot 'em up ass the breed. Oh wait, shit, wrong script. Finally, after 8 years, holy shit, Edelweiss decided to do a spiritual successor to their 2D hack and slash of legend, Fairy Bloom Frisia, which is great for all 7 of us who knows what I'm actually talking about. But for those who don't, allow me to give you a quick rundown of their latest game. Sakuna of Rice and Ruin is a kind of a mixed genre game. One half complex combo system RPG style stat based 2D hack and slash, and the other half is Rice Farming Simulator 2020. And I do mean Rice Farming Simulator, not Farming Simulator, it's just rice. It's rice above and rice below, it's just rice all the way down. But how does such a game work in practice? Well, I believe things will be a little bit clearer if I explain the premise, so I'll do just that. Princess Sakuna is a goddess of the lofty realm, the place where all fancy divinities like her reside. Currently, a festival of sorts is happening so all the gods can offer their finest rice to Lady Kamuhitsuki, who is basically the best god around and who governs all of the other gods. Most gods have to toil for their rice, but Sakuna doesn't need to do anything since she inherited from her family vast supplies of amazing rice, so she just sits around getting drunk and reading romance novels most of the time. That is, until a group of starving humans crashes the party and tries to eat the rice. One thing leads to another and Sakuna ends up accidentally burning down all of the offerings. The head goddess obviously doesn't like that and ends up banishing Sakuna to the Isle of Demons, where she must vanquish the demons and get the situation under control if she ever hopes to return to the capital. Of course, she isn't alone in this journey, as the humans she hates so much also go along with her, and they must learn to work together, lest they starve together in demon-filled territory. But how does Sakuna goes along in trying to free the Isle of Demons? Well, as it turns out, she is the daughter of a harvest goddess and a warrior god, and thus, planting rice and taking care of it doesn't just produce some delicious meals, but also increases her stats. Every batch of rice she successfully raises and harvests increases her strength, which she can then use to explore the island, searching for the head demons she needs to defeat into the side-scrolling segments. This is a game packed with mechanics, some of them which are very unusual, which then makes the whole thing even more confusing as the unusual mechanics have a ridiculous amount of depth, and honestly, if you told me this was actually like a AAA release from a company like Nintendo, you could have fooled me pretty easily. There is a remarkable sense of craftsmanship I feel from every single element of this game, so it can be hard to decide where to begin. So in the interest of clarity and simplicity, let's start from the more traditional angle, from the angle with the more traditional kind of gameplay, and start first on the side-scrolling aspect of the game. The Isle of Demons is divided into many different very short stages that can be beaten from anywhere between 5 to 15 minutes. In them, you side-scroll from one place to the next, beating the ever-living shit out of a variety of different demons. Sakuna can equip different weapons, which can change her stats or attack attributes, though her moveset is the same regardless of which weapons you equip. You get a light attack and a heavy attack that you can combo together, and you get a launcher and you can air juggle, and you can parry as well. And most importantly, you can dodge, but how you dodge is a bit of a doozy. You see, Sakuna has a railment that she can throw at any surface to pull herself up to it immediately. But she can also attach it to an enemy and throw herself to the opposite side of the enemy it attaches to. While it is attached to an enemy, the player can also press a directional button to use a special raiment skill that you can customize from the pause menu, my favorite one being the one where Sakuna just ignores gravity and drop kicks herself into an enemy regardless of where he is and sends them flying in the opposite direction. You can also customize normal skills that you can use at any time unrelated to derailment, and they are a big part in customizing the moveset to be just the way you like it. Some of them can even be a big help expanding your movement range, which can allow you to skip large parts of levels when used correctly. Though one of the slots will probably always be occupied by the crash skill, which allows you to hit enemies so hard they go flying into other enemies, causing massive damage, which is essential for crowd control and to send flying enemies through breakable walls that are hiding secret goodies. Not that this skill is like obligatorily occupying a slot, you probably just want to keep it there, because it is just so universally useful. Both Railman skills and normal skills are activated by spending SP from an unified skill point bar that slowly refills when you're not using skills. Sakuna's combat is fantastic, and it feels great comboing enemies into oblivion, but there is a bit of an odd point that took me a while to get accustomed to, and that's how the combat can feel less responsive than most modern titles, in particular the amount of time it takes for Sakuna to recover back into a neutral state in which she can begin attacking again. Though it varies by move, anything I did left me open to punishment in some form if I missed. For example, if you throw the railment but it doesn't hit a wall or an enemy, then you must wait for a surprisingly long time, at least for such a fast-paced hack and slash, for Sakuna to recover the railment before you can do anything else, leaving you wide open for enemy attacks. Mashing bottoms and comboing the air also results in leaving you open for punishment, and you also can change directions mid-combo. Basically, this game really punishes your whiffs, which, well, a lot of action games technically do, but it's been a while since I played a game where the recovery animation felt this explicitly long, which is a great tool in helping dumb people like me to realize when I screwed up and how to avoid doing it again, but it comes at the cost of making the game feel downright unresponsive at times. This is something you would just have to get used to, since while odd at the beginning, it only took me a couple of hours of combat to get used to it, but I can understand if this feels like a deal breaker for some people. Now, normally you'd unlock new levels by beating the current level and that's it, but since nothing in Sakuna is straightforward, progressing through it sure as hell wouldn't be as well. Instead, every level has a set of different challenges, and completing those challenges awards you with exploration points, which once you unlock enough, will let you enter a new area. The way the game paces itself is that most of the time a story sequence will unlock the first level of a certain region, and the other levels all the way to the boss are unlocked through earning exploration points. And yes, there are bosses in Sakuna, and yes, they are good fun as well. However, I have to admit I do dislike how almost every single boss has a group of infinitely respawning lesser enemies around them. I just hate when games do that. Though Sakuna has a good excuse for that behavior as well, in that under normal circumstances, you will be able to recover health by simply avoiding damage while not attacking, and without those enemies you'd be able to easily recharge all of your health by just avoiding the normal boss attacks. I will explain what I mean by normal circumstances in just a bit. Going back to the exploration points, most of the time I think those are needless padding, made so that you have to play the same level over and over again in order to pad out the game, but not only can you knock out multiple challenges at the same time, but a lot of those challenges make clever use of a level's gimmick or serve to indicate the presence of particularly rare treasures in the level, or my favorite, serves as stealth tutorials for game mechanics that you might not know exist. For example, a level which gives you an exploration point for playing it while having poison resistance serves to both warn you that the level has poison in it, but it also tells you that there is a way to resist the poison, and wouldn't you know, in the same level you can harvest leaves that you can use to make a tea that gives you guessed it, poison resistance. All of that information is relayed to you without the need for long, boring tutorials. It is just a simple small sentence that gives you all of this to work with. And there's a reward for doing so as well, incentivizing you to try it out and see just how the mechanics work. And I'll tell you more about harvesting tea in a bit as well. Every level has its own shape and size. Some are linear fight arenas, some are huge open Metroidvania-like levels with treasure hidden in the nooks and crannies. Some are solely about boss fighting, and some are solely about resource collecting. And finally, there are huge, multi-level dungeons with checkpoints in the middle that will take multiple runs to clear. The reason for that is that, aside from the demons, your greatest enemy in Sakuna is time. Time moves onward at a fast pace once you set foot outside of your little rice farm, and once night comes, visibility drops to almost zero and the enemy stats jump to such absurd heights The demon bunnies you have been killing by the dozen during daytime now have enough health to challenge the game's toughest bosses, so unless you're confident in your skills, you better skedaddle back home as soon as the sun goes down. And speaking of home, that is the perfect segue into talking about the farming portion of the game. You see, when Sakuna isn't fighting demons, she's growing rice. Because this game is about harvesting rice after all. And when I say that, I really do mean it. This isn't a side minigame where you just leave the rice idling until it is done. This isn't even a Harvest Moon affair where you plant rices on squares and then water them once a day and it is done. No, this is real rice farming. Real hardcore rice farming, as real as you could get in a video game anyway. You have to deal with every single step of rice farming, from beginning to end. You will have to till the soil so it is ready for when the planting begins. You have to plant each individual seed on the ground, and you have to check the water level every day to make sure your rice is growing fine. You have to make fertilizer every day to raise your rice stats because yes, your rice has individual stats and you gotta be careful to reach a good balance since almost everything you can throw to raise positive stats can also raise negative stats that can harm your rice. And you have to watch out for diseases until it's finally harvest day, and then you must harvest the rice yourself. And after that, you have to get to threshing the rice so you can get the individual rice grains, and then you must do the hulling to remove the husks and choose if you want to get brown rice, which allows you to make superfood that temporarily raise stats, or white rice, which permanently raises Sakuna's base stats at a lower rate, because yes, growing rice is how you level up in this game, that's just how it is. And that is before you unlock the ability to sort out the rice using mud, so you can sort the good grains from the bad grains. Holy cow, does this game has detailed rice farming. The level of depth is fascinating on its own, but if I had to choose a deeper reason for why I think it is so fascinating, it's just how much love the developers put into making a system this deep. They could have just had a simpler system or a system where the player could plant multiple kinds of crops, but no. They instead recognized they had a limited amount of resources and chose to focus those resources into a single area with razor-sharp focus to bring something to the table no other farming game ever did so far. And perhaps even more interesting, the knowledge the players have at the beginning of the game has intentional gaps on them. The tutorial intentionally leaves out information that will slowly reveal itself as the player collects more agricultural scrolls, which hold a great deal of information about farming. And the tools the players have at the beginning of the game are very rudimentary and will change as the story progresses. Eventually, a grid will unlock to show the perfect spacing between rice seeds, and the warmth of the field and water level will also show on the screen, but even then that will not be all of the information. You will never have all of the information. There will always be some level of experimentation involved. Rice farming in this game is more like alchemy, where you have to try for different results and see what mixes and what don't, than an exact science. And you know what? I love that. It's been a while since a game hit that perfect spot of telling you just enough to keep you moving on while hiding some tricks up its sleeve and leaving it to the player to figure them out, all in the context of an organic gameplay mechanic instead of limited gimmicks. When I found myself participating in online discussions on how to interpret the best way to grow rice based on a particularly vague or perhaps even mistranslated agricultural scroll, that's when I knew this game was, without a shadow of a doubt, something truly special. Also, I should warn that the way rice farming works is that you can't settle on a single routine for every day. The rice grows in phases and every individual phase requires different methods of care, which can be affected by the current season, which by the way changes and also can affect your rice. I told you, this game is deep. Unfortunately, I can see rice farming also being a big deal breaker for most people that are expecting a traditional action game, because you can't really skip it. Rice must grow, because Sakuna only levels up at the end of each successful harvest, and enemies will get stronger every level. Eventually, you won't be able to proceed as a matter of sheer numbers. No amount of skill will get you through a boss fight where the boss can one-shot you while you can do little but chip away at his giant health bar. And sure, you can tell other characters to plant the rice and harvest it and mostly ignore it on a day-to-day basis, but that would lead to poor quality rice that will barely level Sakuna up, meaning that it will take even longer to catch up as you need to do more additional harvests. You simply must harvest rice, and that takes patience and dedication that some people might just not have. Another deal breaker is if you do like the rice farming, but you are a perfectionist and you get frustrated unless you do it 100% correctly, because unfortunately it's going to take quite a while before you have all of the tools and knowledge to do so, and even then a simple mistake can ruin your perfect run. Of course, the game doesn't expect you to do perfect. Every single harvest will level Sakuna up at least once, regardless of how bad it goes, but if you do it manually, it's pretty easy to boost that up by several levels, which is why I recommend you do the rice farming. And gameplay wise, there simply isn't much difference between a 95% harvest and a perfect one. Unless the game makes you the regent of rice or something if you do it perfectly, because honestly, I never got a perfect harvest and just kind of bumbled my way through the farming segments while still having some decent fun. But of course, to those who just messing around and experimenting and trying your best isn't enough, those who really want the results, who really need the 100% score, yeah, they are in for a really rough time. So anyway, back to the crafting materials I told I'll get back to earlier. During action segments, you can encounter various crafting materials, which back at home base you can use to A. Craft new equipment, B. Make delicious meals that will boost your character's stats for a day and also give you bonus effects. Ideally, every meal you eat should at least give you natural healing, which is the bonus effect you need to regenerate health during the action sequences. I told you I'd get back on that as well. Or C. Throw it into the fertilizer. I'm not joking, you can throw every item you get into the fertilizer tank. Found some gold? You can throw it. Found some meat? You can throw it. How about medicine? Yep, you can throw it as well. And hell, why not throw the rarest weapon crafting ingredients you got from grinding nighttime super hard bosses? Because yeah, you can throw that too. You can throw anything into it. Fertilizer is really important since everything you throw into it can cause a stat boost to your rice when you throw it in the field, and the stat boost to your rice translates directly to stat boost to Sakuna when she levels up. The fertilizer might just be the most important element of rice farming, and of course it's a deep one that's hard to get right and comes with its own fertilizer stats. So yeah, did you get that this game is surprisingly deep yet? Even the fertilizer has individual stats. This game is so deep, in fact, it got acknowledged in a Japanese agricultural newspaper. And yeah, once again, I'm not joking, they got agricultural newspapers over there. This razor-sharp focus into a singular point until it becomes incredibly deep also works wonderfully for the story. The individual story beats are not that special, but the cast of characters definitely is. The boss demons don't receive any characterization, they're just there to be defeated, meaning for most of the game, the job of carrying the plot falls onto the backs of Sakuna, her loyal guardian dog Tama, who always flops his tongue the moment he stops talking in the cutest way possible, and the humans she must take care of in the Isle, who are not completely helpless and will help her by crafting equipment, helping on the rice field, and even cooking delicious meals. The real depth, however, is displayed during the dinner scenes, where they all sit together and eat whatever you chose that night to boost your stats, because yes, you don't just grow rice, you can actually sit down and eat and watch as the characters eat exactly what you picked, which just showcases how incredibly detailed the game is, but more importantly, what is amazing is the dialogue during these scenes. The characters, coming from different places and having different perspectives and heavy amounts of emotional baggage from their harsh lives, all clash in topics like religion, responsibility, history and such, but it all comes off as incredibly human, because none of them are pretentiously knowledgeable about the subjects they talk about. They really are just human, trying to make sense of the complicated world they live in. Especially, ironically enough, Sakuna, who is a goddess, yet goes through the longest, richest character arc as she grows from the spoilered rich girl archetype she starts as into becoming a person worthy of the title of being a goddess of harvest and war, of rice and ruin, if you will. Graphics-wise, the game is pretty good as well. It's nothing complex or realistic, but instead stylized, and nowhere this is seen better than in the exaggerated anime-style character designs. By default, it also does come with heavy bloom, and I really dislike the heavy use of bloom, and you can turn it off, but doing so makes everything looks weirdly flat and completely changes the color palette of the game. to more muted tones. That's how harsh the blue is, but turning it off does manage to cause a blow to the art style, and it's clear this game was meant to be played with it on by the art director, so that's just how I decided to play until I got used to it. On a side note, the water in this game is just spectacular. A friend of mine that we might have in common might even say it is really good water, and he would certainly enjoy it. But back on track, the water really is just spectacular. From the water in your rice fields to the water you find doing levels and even the big water blobs you ride in the lake area, the ripples are just so detailed, and you just to wait until you have a family of ducks living in your rice field, each creating individual ripples in the water. The level of detail in the water is just beautiful. But enough about water. It's about time for me to state my final conclusion. Sakuna of Rice and Ruin is an amazing game, easily one of my favorite games of 2020. There are a few small problems with it, but no game is perfect, and overall I felt pretty damn good about the entire thing as I finished it. It took me about 24 hours to finish, and to me that's incredibly good because while I've played longer games, all of those games had me do a considerable amount of busy work that I disliked. Meanwhile, I enjoyed every single hour of Sakuna, and that's why I think I got the perfect bang to my buck ratio. Is that what Americans say? Bang to my buck? To the buck? I don't know. It's good. It's good and decently long is what I'm trying to say. The main problem though with recommending Sakuna is that both halves of the game are so different, it's hard to guarantee that everyone will like both, even if they like one of them. And if you don't like one of them, then you don't like one half of the game, and you essentially bought a game that you only enjoy 50% of, which is not a lot compared to other games where we might enjoy, I don't know, 70%. But on the other hand, I enjoyed both of them, and to people like me, if you see my other reviews and you're like, oh yes, I think I like the same things this guy likes, well, I can guarantee a good time. You've never played anything quite like this, and you probably never will if you miss this chance. So if you love action games and you also have the patience of a farmer, feel free to jump in and experience the adventure of a lifetime. Okay then, video's ending, thanks for watching to the very end. Please like, dislike, comment, subscribe, send the FBI, send the CIA, just do anything so that we can share this video and the love of Rice to the world and YouTube's algorithm. Okay, thanks, bye!